What are my predictions for the consulting industry for 2024? Hi everyone, my name is Johannes Niari from Mastering Consulting, and with Mastering Consulting we want to help you to build an outstanding and successful consulting career. And of course the big question is, after such a tough year 2023, what will 2024 look like? Before we take a look at the predictions for 2024, let's do a little bit of recap of 2023, because in order to understand where we are going, we need to understand a little bit the past, and we need to understand how these dynamics occurred and what were the reasons for the situation of last year. And if you are following a consulting industry, or if you're interested in management consulting, then you probably also heard that there were massive layoffs in the entire consulting industry, and that there have been also hiring stops, and that it was in general a very difficult year for the entire consulting industry. Well, of course, the question is, what is the reason for that, and why was this so bad? And if I say bad, then I really mean that this was probably the worst year for the entire consulting industry since the financial crisis in 2008. So, what were the reasons for this negative year that we saw last year? To understand that question, we need to understand consulting cycles. So we need to understand, when does the consulting industry boom and when there is a difficult time for the consulting industry. And the big question is always, is it better for the consulting industry if there is an economic upswing, so that companies have the money, that they have the budget in order to spend it for consulting services? Or is it better for for the consulting industry if there is an economic downturn, because then there's a big demand for restructurings, turnarounds, and so on. And the answer is that actually in both situations, the consulting industry benefits. There's only one scenario, one economic scenario, where the consulting industry is in a really difficult situation. And this is when there is a lot of uncertainty in the market. And this is exactly what we saw last year. Because you probably know that we came out, first of all, in 2020, there was a lot of uncertainty because there was COVID, of course. Then the Fed and all the banks, they printed a lot of money. So this led to an economic boom that was pretty intense, and there was a lot of money in the market, and there was a lot of demand for consulting services because companies just had the money, okay, and they hired consultancies for everything. And then suddenly, the Fed came out and they increased the interest rates. And this is, when there, came a lot of uncertainty into the market, because some companies had to refinance themselves. Some companies, are, speculating about maybe a recession. There have been, major supply chain issues as well. There are, many companies were in a very difficult liquidity situation. So in general, last year especially, there was a lot of uncertainty. And what happens if there's a lot of uncertainty in the market? Then companies will keep their cash tight, okay? So they want to stay liquid because they don't know what's going to happen. They don't make any big bets. They just want to keep the money together. And the first cost position that they will save, or where they try to decrease the costs, are the external costs. And this, of course, includes consulting services. And this is why we saw very, very little demand last year from the industry for consulting services. And of course, this led to a situation where there was a very low utilization across almost all consulting firms. So I heard of offices where, from big firms, where 75% or more are currently on the beach, okay, because there's simply not enough projects out there currently to staff all the people. And what consulting firms typically do, obviously, is that they cut their major cost position, and this is personnel costs, okay? So they slow down or even stop the hiring. They don't give out any kind of promotions, and they lay off people, okay? This is how consulting firms survive if there is, low demand from the market side. And this is exactly what we saw last year, and this is exactly why there was so much pressure on the market and why it was so difficult to get into consulting, And many people unfortunately lost their job last year because the firms raised the standards and just dropped much more people than they typically do. Now, the big question is, what will happen in 2024? So will it continue? Will there still be layoffs? Will it still be difficult to get hired by a consulting firm? What is my take on that? And before we talk about that, of course, maybe a remark. So this is only speculation. This is only what I expect to happen based on many conversations that I have with people in the industry, in the consulting industry, in corporates, with some investors where I have contacts to, and all around the world. So typically, I have like every week a call with so many people from different consulting firms in different countries, and I always ask the question, what do you expect to happen this year? And based on that, I came to a conclusion, and this is what I expect. Okay. So what we need in order to see the turnaround, in the consulting industry is a trigger event, because, as I said, the consulting industry, they benefit from a upswing and they benefit from a downturn. But we cannot stay in this uncertainty mode. Okay, this is really dangerous for the consulting industry. So we need some kind of trigger event that pushes the economy either in an upswing or in a downturn. Okay, this is what we basically need for the consulting industry. So what is more likely? And based on all the data that is available, and also what I hear in the phone calls that I make, people are expecting a recession to hit pretty hard this year. Okay, a recession, the official definition is for it, two consecutive quarters with a negative GDP. But apart from that official definition, we already saw pretty negative quarters and two consecutive negative quarters for many industries already, like in the past 1 or 2 years. Okay, so I really expect this to happen like probably this year. I don't know when it's gonna happen. I would expect that it will happen sometime in Q1 or Q2. Okay, and I expect also that we see a major stock market correction, and this could be a trigger event for the consulting industry. Because what will happen, once we see a crash, once, the entire economic sentiment, turns negative, then also, there's a negative narrative. And this is where the companies then really realize, okay, now we need to do something, because they already, most companies already run on very thin margins. Most companies are already struggling with refinancing themselves because interest rate raises, and it's really tough for them partly to get the money. So this will put much more pressure on companies, and especially like in the German industry, for example, in the European industry, where there's a lot of manufacturing, where there's a lot of automotive industry, very low margin business. Okay, this might be quite challenging. So I expect, once a recession hits, I expect the sentiment to turn, and then there will be an increase in demands for consulting service. Okay, because then they need to do the turnarounds, they need to do the restructurings, they need to do the liquidations, the cash management, stuff like that. Okay, this will become very urgent, and this, as sad as it is, for the entire company, because for the entire economy, because this means that it's going to be even worse for people, but this could be a positive trigger event for the consulting industry. Okay, and then once that happens, I expect the demand for consulting services increase again, and then again hiring might be easier, and also the layoffs might be reduced. So again, as I said, this is just what I assume based on a lot of discussions that I had previously, and let's see if this will be true. But what does that mean? Okay, so this generally means that I expect Q1 and Q2 still to be very, very tough for the consulting industry, and Q3 and Q4, I would assume that then we see the turnaround, and then that it's going to be better for the consulting industry. But only, and this is also important to mention, for specific consulting segments. Okay, so I expect, especially, of course, to see all the transformation practices, all the restructuring practices, to boom, because topics like, as I said, cost cutting, liquidity management, restructuring companies, turnarounds, and so on. This will be probably, one of the hottest topics within the next 12 to 18 months. Okay, this is what I would assume. On the other hand, probably, more the growth topics like, venturing, innovation, culture improvement, sustainability, so more like the soft topics. I don't expect that to be, a focus point for the consulting industry in the next 12 to 18 months. Probably, I'm pretty sure that these topics, within the next 5 years, will become very, very relevant again. But, the large corporates simply don't have the budget and the focus to care about growth projects and venturing, sustainability, and so on. Sustainability might be a bit different because, there is also a lot of regulation involved. But especially like the growth project, this might be very difficult because most of the companies will be focused on the more serious stuff like cost cutting and so on. This is what I expect to happen. So let's see. Again, Q1, Q2 probably still will be very tough. Then Q3, Q4, hopefully, we see a turnaround in the industry, and then we are heading towards better times. So this is what I expect. So let's see how this year turns out. If you want to work on your consulting career and if you want to become less dependent on these cycles because you're so good that you will make a good career no matter what, then you can apply working with us. So we have the Consulting Skill Bootcamp. This is a very intense coaching program where we help you to either get into consulting or learn the consulting skills or learn project management skills. So depending where you are in your career, and you can apply working with us if you click on the link below. Would be happy to see you in the application process, because again, if you want to excel in the industry, that's really important, especially this year. There will still be a lot of competition, and then it will be even tougher. So you need to be prepared. You need to be better prepared than your competition, and the best way to do that is to work on your skills and work with us and to maximize your chances of having a great career in consulting. With that being said, talk to you very soon. Goodbye, Johannes.